Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Noel. I'm just waiting for a few more people to join us here. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Can you hear me? If you not, thank you. Hi, Derek. Thanks for providing support. I think I've got everybody admitted, and you can hear me, obviously, so that's a good thing. Great. All right. I see one person who doesn't have an audio connection, so hopefully they'll get that set up. And then Derek, are you going to admit more people as we go, or should I keep doing that? Are you able to?
I think you have to add me as a co-presenter or co-moderator in order to do that.
I did make host. I made you a co-host.
That's
Does that
yeah.
sound
I think
correct?
that'll allow it. And so then if something pops up, I've not seen anything pop up yet, but I will.
Okay.
I'll watch for that.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, I am going to go ahead and get started because I see there are quite a few people that have joined us. So thank you everybody for being here. I'm a little nervous. This is the first time I've done something like this. So bear with me today. I appreciate it. Just by way of introduction, my name's Noel Zickafoos, in case you're curious how to say that crazy last name. I work for Overdrive, so I'm your account manager. I work really closely with Chris Hott at the SEDC office, but am absolutely available to all of you as well. So today I hope is really useful to you and you learn a lot, but just know that I will continue to be available and am a support person in addition to the SEDC team for any questions that you guys have. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we will just get going here. All right. So today we are starting off by talking about Marketplace, and we're also going to talk about doing some reporting, gaining insights, learning about what your students are reading and how you can do that through the Overdrive Marketplace. Now, I know that I'm guessing that many of you might not even have a Marketplace account, so we'll also talk about how you can get that for yourself. So that'll be part of today's session, and hopefully even if you don't have Marketplace access, it's something that we can easily get set up for each and every one of you if that's something that you're interested in. So going into this, just know that you may or may not actually have the ability to do these things today, but hopefully soon. So purpose of today, I just really wanted to give everybody the ability to use Marketplace insights and reporting to gather reading data, gain insight into what your students are reading, how much they're reading, if they seem to be preferring audiobooks or that sort of thing. And I'm even going to show you a brand new tool that allows you and your teachers to see more specifically, if students are reading books that have been assigned to them. So that'll be kind of exciting to go over with you. We're also going to talk about using Marketplace and specifically your Advantage account and what that means in ways that can support your teachers and provide classroom reading options for your students. And then we'll also explore just help resources that are available to you, and then promotional and training resources that you can use for yourself, but also that you can share with teachers, even that you can use with students and even parents, honestly. So we have a lot of resources now that you really can share with anybody. They're appropriate, not just for administrators or for yourselves as the administrators of your account, but really could be shared directly with students. So we'll dive into that as well. Just by way of housekeeping, definitely chat in any questions. I know we've got Derek here today. He's gonna keep an eye on the chat questions for me. Definitely feel free to interrupt me, Derek, if there's a question that I really should address right then. I'll try to keep an eye on it as well, but I appreciate the help with that. So first thing, I want to actually start with a little poll just to keep it interactive. So let me do my best to figure out how to do that. Okay, so we're launching a poll here. This should show up on your screen. Derek, can you nod if you see the poll as well? So the question is, have you ever signed into Marketplace? So you can answer, yes, I've signed in recently, yes, but I can't remember my username and password. I do not have a Marketplace account or credentials, or I have no idea. So I'll just give you a couple seconds to respond to that, and then we'll wrap up the poll. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So hopefully you can all see the results here. It looks like we got half of you to respond to the poll. So my guess is the other half of you weren't paying any attention, but that's okay. I'm just joking. So 3 people said, yes, I've signed in recently. So that's cool. We've got some people who are more familiar with Marketplace and someone who doesn't maybe have a Marketplace account. So thanks for participating in that. All right. So just to give you a quick overview, Marketplace is a website where we keep our catalog. So the Overdrive catalog is available. We have 2.9 million ebooks and audiobooks that are available to purchase. And it also is the administrator portal where you can do pretty much everything other than read the books themselves. So it is a place that is just chock full of tools and resources and ways to really, make your Sora platform even more, personalized and make sure that it's super, helpful to your students. When you first get to Marketplace, it looks like this. If you don't have a username and password, definitely feel free to reach out to me and we can set you either up with a Marketplace account, or I'm happy to help you remember what your credentials are for that website. The way that things are set up for the service center, so all of SEDC, and I'm kind of working under the assumption that most of you are part of that. If not, then you may be part of a different school district that has Sora as well. So the way it works for SEDC is that, the service center has built a really huge collection of ebooks and audiobooks that then get shared by every school and district that they serve. So that is what we refer to as kind of the shared collection or the consortium. And then underneath that, each school and or school district has the ability to create their own Advantage account. So that's something that I set up for you at Overdrive. And what that Advantage account does is gives your individual school or your individual district the ability to purchase additional content. It gives you the ability to just have access to the Marketplace website, which is where you then have access to reporting and insights. And it also, as you begin kind of building your own sub collection of resources, you're able to use Marketplace to then manage that and use all of the tools in Marketplace to, benefit your teachers and students. So Advantage accounts used to carry a cost, and that hasn't been the case for quite some time now. They are free to set up, free to maintain. So it's a really nice resource to have at your fingertips. And the cost that you incur is just if and when you decide to purchase content. So there's really not a reason at this point not to get started and get your own Advantage account set up. Something to consider if you are, part of a district within SEDC, you may want to create an Advantage account that your entire district would share. And so the difference there is that, anything that you purchased in that account would be visible only to students in the district. If you set up an Advantage account for a specific school building, like if you're just at a specific high school, then the things that you purchase in that Advantage account would then only be available to students and staff at that specific high school. So, there may be a decision there around whether it makes sense for your district to do a building by building Advantage account or one whole one as a district. The benefits of a district account are that then content can be shared across all schools in the district, with the caveat that you still have the ability to set access levels so that your high school appropriate content is not visible to your younger students. So still a lot of protections that way to keep the collection appropriate for specific grade levels. So when I talk about Marketplace, one of the things that is, I think, the biggest learning curve is our lending models. So I definitely wanted to just walk through what those are really quickly. And also, part of what you'll be provided with today is a PDF of all of these slides, and they will have links to all kinds of resources. So we have a training team at Marketplace at Overdrive that does an incredible job of creating short, concise how-to videos on pretty much everything. So I always tell people, if you've got a question or if you're getting a question from a teacher, chances are there's a video for that. So each one of these, hopefully you guys can see, is linked to a specific short how-to video about that lending model. So you'll have access to these links once this slide deck is shared with you. So let me just walk through these really briefly, and then I'm just going to jump into Marketplace and start showing you guys what it looks like and how to do some things. So the first lending model that I'll talk about is one copy, one user. And you can see here the description. So these are books that really function as much like print books as you can get. You buy, if you need one copy of a book, you would buy one copy. It can be checked out just like a print book to one person at a time. The nice thing about one copy, one user books is that they never expire. So some ebooks expire after a period of time, and we'll talk about that next. But one copy, one user books are amazing because you buy them and they never expire. So not only do you get all the benefits of digital, like ease of distribution, not having to store that, gather them back and store them somewhere, not having to bind them and things like that, but you also get the ability to keep them forever. They cannot be lost or stolen or damaged. So one copy, one user is kind of everybody's favorite. Sometimes they can be a little more costly per copy, but you can see how it's a great investment because you have those copies forever. The next option is metered access, and it's almost the same as one copy, one user, except that it expires. So if you have one copy of a metered access book, it can be checked out to one person at a time, but it does expire. So sometimes they'll expire after a period of time. So you might buy a copy of a book and it expires after 12 months or 24 months. Sometimes you will have a metered access book that expires after 26 checkouts. That's kind of the most common option. So, and there are a handful of other options that, they're, earlier of 24 months or 52 checkouts, things like that. But by and large, you'll see that most of them are either a certain period of time or they are by checkout. So these can sometimes still be kind of costly. And in those cases, I don't always recommend them a ton, but sometimes metered access still makes sense. You get all the benefits of digital, and sometimes you get 26 checkouts and the copy might only be $7.99. So you get guaranteed 26 consecutive checkouts for a fairly low price. So it's not a terrible option, depending on what the pricing is. And I guess we always try to kind of throw this out there as a caveat that these lending models and the prices are set by the publishers. So the publishers own the rights to the books. And so we do have to abide by, what they are offering. But a lot of them are improving what they offer. And they're also offering a lot of these alternate lending models that I'm about to jump into. So, I think things are progressing and we're making a lot of progress with publishers. So I say that also because I think in the past, sometimes people have felt like maybe the pricing or the options that they saw weren't entirely feasible, but because those are improving, it's always good to check back on things if potentially a book a teacher asked you for a year ago just wasn't priced in a way that was feasible, it's definitely worth checking on that again, that kind of thing. So alternate lending models include a cost per circ lending model. And this is actually really cool because you can add any number of books to your collection at no initial cost. And it makes them available for your students and teachers to check out in Sora, but you were only charged if they actually get checked out. So it's a cost per circ or cost per checkout. You can set a budget for these, like a monthly cap, so that you don't, suddenly incur charges for thousands of checkouts that you weren't expecting. There are ways to limit it for, only so many cost per circ checkouts per, end user, per student per month. So different ways to kind of keep it reined in. But this is a really good option for expanding your collection, offering more choice to students, but without having to buy the full price regular copies right up front. So I'll show you that in a little bit when we get into Marketplace. And then you also have simultaneous use. So simultaneous use actually works more like a subscription, where you get unlimited access to a specific title or a package of titles for a period of time. So it's typically either 6 months or a year, but we do have one that is a 1-month option that I'll show you today as well. So those are kind of neat because you know that you will never run into not having enough copies when you have it in simultaneous use. And then my favorite is our class sets. I call it the rental option. This is a way to actually rent copies of books to specific students. It's a one-time use option, but they get assigned to those specific students. Typically, it's either a 60 or a 90-day rental period. Many of the books are of low cost per copy, and this is a really great way to meet the needs of large groups of students for a much reduced price than just buying that many copies in the regular price. So that's lending models. Did we get any questions come through that I needed to answer, Derek?
So the main one that came through, as Elaine said, I set up an account for only my school and purchased books for the year. The district came back and really didn't want me to do this. What are the advantages of doing this? So about setting up a school only account versus the other. And if that's not, if you want to jump in there, Elaine, and kind of Elaine Shriver, and share some more, that'd be great.
Well, when I went and I asked him how to pay for it, I was afraid maybe we'd get shut down, and then the kids, where we're out in the middle of nowhere, we don't have access to a library. So I thought, well, this would give the kids an opportunity to read some books online that only our school could use and not the whole district. And so they come back and says, well, are you going to do this every year, or what are you thinking? And I said, well, I don't really know. I just wanted to try it this year and see what's going on. And they said, well, we really don't want you to do this. They're going to go ahead, I think, and do it. But they just kind of said, well, we don't want to see you do this every year. So I just didn't know how to answer them. I mean, I thought it would be a good idea to have them online where the kids can read them anytime, whether they're at school or at home. So,
right. Well, and unfortunately, you'll still, I think, run into that sometimes with people who just aren't as familiar with digital and, why it's important to have in addition to, your regular library options. I think just kind of continuing to remind them of what you just said, that it's available to students when they're at home, in the evenings. It's available to them over summer break, winter break. So it's a way to continue. I mean, everyone knows the benefits of reading. So it's a way to continue to provide those options that, they otherwise might not have access to because they can't come to school, over summer break, or potentially right now if some of you have schools that are closed. I guess in terms of the Advantage account being like for your individual school or district, I know that the districts pay into the larger service center, so that could be part of the concern that they're allocating budget towards the shared collection, which is amazing, and that's what's allowing Chris to build such a huge, amazing collection of books for all the students to share. But mentioning to your administration specifically that sometimes, with that many students sharing a library, there are always going to be a handful of books that kids just are having a hard time getting their hands on because it's a really popular book and it's being, a handful of copies are maybe being shared across a few thousand people. So if they kind of understand that having, additional copies of those books in your Advantage account allows your students to have sole access to them, I think that might help them a little bit. So hopefully I've addressed that okay, but definitely reach out to me if you're still, looking for ideas or
Okay.
having other questions about that.
Thank you very much about that.
So I am going to dive into Marketplace here and actually show you guys kind of how to navigate the site, and then also then we're going to jump into reports, which I think is fun if you like to geek out over numbers, or if you just like to see more specifics about what's happening. So let me dive out here. So for those of you who have a Marketplace account, obviously you've been here, you know what it looks like. Hopefully you'll still learn something today, but for those of you who don't have an account, this is what Marketplace looks like. The main thing that I want to draw your attention to is, so this is kind of the main page or landing page of Marketplace. And this blue bar is where you see pretty much all of your, menu options. So you've got insights. So we're going to dive into that when we do reports. So that one kind of makes sense. You've got your admin menu with a ton of different options. So we'll dive into that. Marketplace is where you can curate. So this is something that the SEDC team does on a large scale for everyone. They build collections, and then those are the collections that show up in Sora. So they might have a collection of read-along titles, or they have a collection of kindness and caring type titles, or diversity, that kind of thing. And it allows you to really make Sora feel more personal, and also makes it really easy for students to find relevant content. When you have an Advantage account, you do gain the ability to actually curate specifically for the people that are using your Advantage account. So whether that's your specific school building or your district, you would then be able to take on curation and actually customize how Sora appears just within that district or school. I'm not going to dive into that a ton today because it's a kind of like a subject of its own, but just know that that's also something you can access in Marketplace. You've got news where we just post like recent sales, things that are happening, that kind of thing. Invoicing, which we won't dive into today. And then it also gives you access to a support menu. So you would just click on support and you see all kinds of links. I don't know if it'll load properly, but like I'm listed here as your account manager. You have a whole support team available to you. And then you also get tools like being able to manage holds, return titles on behalf of a user, search checkouts. If you're like, who has this book checked out, you can actually, use this tool to see who has it. And then you've got links to help resources like Marketplace help, Overdrive help, and our resource center, which is super useful, and we'll talk about in a little bit. You've also got access to technical support, so you can submit a ticket directly to our technical support team if someone's having trouble logging in or something, invoicing support and authentication support. So lots of helpful things there. So from here, you've also got this search bar up at the top. So honestly, the easiest way to find books in Marketplace, if you're looking at purchasing options, is just to type it in. So for example, if we were to be interested in The Giver, you can type it in a simple search, and it just pulls up the most relevant options, which hopefully includes the book you're looking for. So in this case, we've got The Giver of Stars first, but if we scroll down, what I was really looking for was Lois Lowry's book. And then you see a lot of information about that book. So I'm just going to walk you through that real quickly. You've got your title, your author. We see who the publisher is. So Houghton Mifflin is one of the big ones. So we see they're the publisher. we see this title is labeled as juvenile fiction, have some subject, BISAC headings, that kind of thing. And then we can also see some of the books are tagged with things like ATOS level, Lexile levels, interest, text difficulty. So those are really nice. And you can also search Marketplace using those parameters as well, if that's something that's really important to your school community. Over on the right-hand side, you've got your price, you have your lending model. So if you recall, we just talked about one copy, one user, which is the acronym is OCOU. So we see the giver is an OCOU or one copy, one user book. That means if I buy copies of this book, I get to own them forever. And then we see some information about the format. So the big thing is if it's got the book icon, it's an ebook. If it's got headphones, as we see here, it is the audiobook. And then you always want to make sure that your ebooks come with Overdrive Read and your audiobooks come with Overdrive Listen. If those are listed, you're good to go on any device, with the exception that if you really want that to be something that you can send to a Kindle Paperwhite, you would want to look for books that have the Kindle format as well. But as long as it says Overdrive Read and Overdrive Listen, you know it's going to work great in Sora and work on any device with an internet connection. From here, this I also wanted to point out is super handy. So you can see ownership information about this book that's specific to the account. So I can see this first line that this refers to the consortium, and it shows that the consortium owns 4 copies of this book in the OCOU lending model. If it was metered access or simultaneous use, we'd see that here. We won't talk about Advantage shared today, but if there was a copy that an Advantage account had owned and shared with everyone, it would show up here. And then we see 2 of those copies are currently checked out. There are no holds right now. And then we can see total number of checkouts on this book has been 369. If I'm in my Advantage account, I also would see if I own this in my Advantage account. So I would see own OCOU, and if I had a copy, it would say 1. If any of my Advantage account copies were checked out at this time, and then we can see that 54 of these checkouts were from Advantage users, meaning Advantage specific, users who have access to Advantage account content. So hopefully that makes sense. And the nice thing about the searching in Marketplace is that you also have all of these filters along the left-hand side. So if you were then wanting to filter down to, actually I only want to see books that are not yet owned in my collection, you can filter down to that. If you were really just only looking for ebooks, if you really only want one copy, one user books, you can then filter those options, make sure, I really just want English for today. And when you hit, you can see there will be 88 results. And when you hit apply, it takes that search and filters it down to all of those specific parameters that you set. Last but not least, those lending models that we talked about, you find those here in the blue bar under the shop menu. So you've got this main page is going to show you one copy, one user, and metered access. So those are the ones that are most like print books. But then if you want to look at options in cost per circ, simultaneous use, or the class set rental, you come to your shop menu and actually choose that option, and it takes you into that area of the catalog. So for example, if I come into class sets, here I'm looking at titles that are available in that rental option where I can rent it for a specific group of students, anywhere from 1 person at a time to 400 or more. The way that this model works is you would search for the book that you're looking for. Type in The Hate You Give. If it's available in the rental option, it will pull up in your search, and then you'll see either in this particular case, this one is a 2-month term for $3.50 a user, or The Hate You Give is available in 2 different options. So if I wanted to rent it for 3 months or 90 days, it would be $1.17 per student. And then I would just click add class set. And then what it does is it takes me to a screen where I then input a list of the usernames for those students who want a copy of that book. And this is actually part of the purchase process. You put in the usernames that the students use for Sora. Hopefully you can get a list, in Excel or something. You just copy and then paste them in. And it assigns those copies directly to those specific users. And then it shows up in Sora right on their home tab. And you give it whatever start date you want. You could put in your email address to let you know when that goes live, maybe the teacher as well. And then when you click purchase, it just charges you that $1.17 multiplied by the number of users that you listed. And then on that start date, those books just show up in those students' accounts. So it's handy, to really meet the needs of large groups of students for a low cost. We're going to leave this page. We're not going to buy any class sets today. So that's Marketplace in a nutshell. One thing that I do want to point out to everybody is if you are looking at, available content, this featured tab takes you to lists that then, bring you back to a full list of those titles. So for example, if I was looking at, I'd really like to look at picture book favorites. I can click on this list and it'll take me to a full list of picture book favorites that then I can shop from. But you also have this more list option. It does link you out to our resource center, but this area of our resource center is chock full of lists that have been hand built by our team of librarians that work at Overdrive. So for example, if you were looking for diverse reading options, maybe your school or district is really trying to promote own voices and things like that. You would come into this diverse reading. You see all these different, specific lists. So for example, we need diverse books. We pulled in every book that we have that falls within that, hashtag. And if you click on that, it then just opens up that list in Marketplace and you're able to shop right from that list as once it pulls up. So that's a really handy way to find relevant content without having to just try to think of books or search title by title. This will bring up all the we need diverse books, and then you can add them to carts and purchase them from here.
Noel, you may want to mention about, like, right on that screen, you got a New Kid by Jerry Craft, and it's got that fixed layout, big little icon. Do you want to mention what that is? That could be helpful.
So fixed layout is a type of book that if it's kind of picture based, oftentimes the publisher provides it in a fixed layout so that it really can't be adjusted. You can imagine if you had a picture book and then suddenly tried to kind of like alter the size of the text, it would also then skew the size of the picture and things like that. And so it's provided in a fixed layout where you cannot adjust, text size and things like that, because it would throw off the look of the book. So when you see fixed layout, that's what that's referring to. And chances are it's usually like a graphic novel or a picture book type of thing. And then since you brought that up, you'll also see some books that will list read along next to them. And those are read along. So if you're not familiar, those are ebooks that also have professional narration. Typically the words are also highlighted as they're read. So those are, they are clearly labeled in Marketplace. It'll say fixed layout, and then it'll also say read along right next to it. So you're getting that audio in addition to the ebook with that. Okay, so that is kind of lending models in a nutshell, featured tabs, using those lists to shop. Now I think are there any other questions that came through, Derek, just about Marketplace, shopping, that sort of thing?
Nothing else coming through, no. But I did point out that with that language feature where you could search, that's great for dual language immersion or for foreign language programs if you want to find those tools available to have in your library.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, honestly, it also is helpful just because we do have, a handful of people sometimes who reach out and say like, gosh, I accidentally bought all these books in German. because you can't tell by the cover art or something. So it is helpful. If you know you want English, use the filter, make sure you're actually looking at the English versions of the books. So I want to dive into insights. I think that it can be really interesting to look at what's happening with the digital library. And that's regardless of whether you've actually purchased content. If you have access to Marketplace, if you set up an Advantage account, you get the ability to look at these reports, and it's not just data on the books you've purchased, it's just data on your students and what they're doing, what they're reading. So let's tap into insights. The first thing I'll show you, you first get a summary that just shows kind of how many books are, how many titles are in the collection. So you can see it's pretty big. You get a little summary of, how many unique users there have been. It defaults to the last 30 days. And this does refer to the whole consortium. So even if you're in your Advantage account, it would still refer to the whole, all of SCDC. So what I prefer to look at is the Soraa Activity. So you'll see it listed right here, the link. We'll click on Soraa Activity. Because Soraa Activity, it gives you an overview of what's happening, but it does allow you to filter down to your specific school or district. So for example, when we first come, you can see what it defaults to all branches, which is just the term in Marketplace for schools. Last 30 days is the date range that we see. And we see public library activities included, and then all users. So that's just what it defaults to. But you've got this filter activity button. If I click on that, I'm then taken to this report options where I can pick specific schools. I can pick multiple schools. So for example, if I wanted all of the, I assume these are all in the same district, but just for an example, you can click on multiple schools and filter all the activity down to those schools that you've selected. You can either leave it at last and pick the last 10 months or last year, or you can flip the period type completely to specific. And I could just type in the first day of school if I just want to know, what's been happening since all the kids came back this fall. So I'm just going to guess that was maybe around August 20th. And then if I leave the end date blank, it's just going to bring me data all the way up through the current day. When you do it this way, we don't have a way to limit public library activity just by district, so that gets excluded by default. So what we're going to see is Soraa Activity for all of these specific schools since August 20th, and I'm going to click update and we'll see how that filters out. So now what we see is for those schools, there were 1,212 books opened in that period of time. So since the start of school, we can see a total number of hours that have been read, and it's broken down by month. So we see in August, how many hours were spent in audiobooks, how many hours are spent in ebooks. And you can see in this case, ebook time spent in ebooks was a little bit longer than time spent in audiobooks. So for each month, you can hover and see more information. And then you can kind of dive into some more of these, but I specifically want to show you unique users. So we can actually see unique users in total since the start of school has been 226. So compare that to books opened. So 1,200 books opened, 226 unique users. So that means that since the start of school, 226 different individuals have read a book in Soraa. So it's quite a bit lower than the number of books open. And I think this is often really eye-opening. Unique users are always lower than what people expect. And I think we realize, there's still so much work to do to get everyone to be aware that this is a resource for them, that it's available to them. How many families and students just probably still haven't heard about it. And we can see kind of that representation here. So 226 individuals, which is amazing. but I'm guessing it's not every student in those schools. So that's a good gauge, I think, and something to always check and just kind of make sure that it's growing so that you know your reach is growing as well. As we scroll down, then we see achievements earned, which is kind of fun. The blast off achievement, you can kind of hover over it and see what that means. So it says students sign into their school for the first time. They get the blast off achievement when they just first sign into Sora. So since the start of school, 177 individuals have signed into Sora for the first time. So that's exciting. And then this is really neat. You actually can see the trending titles for the specific schools that you selected. So we can see that for all of those Delta schools, the top 10 titles by checkout are this Katie Wu Has the Flu. And then we can see that it's had 6 checkouts. Scaredy Squirrel has had 5. So, this is kind of fun to look at, see what your kids are reading. If it's narrowed down to just your specific school, then you really get a good sense of, where the interest lies within your specific community. And then also top 10 titles by time read, which is usually going to be like longer, more advanced books because they take longer to read. So time spent in Harry Potter, Order of the Phoenix, you can see reading hours. This is probably really small for you guys, I apologize. It comes in at number 1 at 26 hours. So since the start of school, that book has had the most reading time of all the books. So, so that's Soraa Activity. But I do get a lot of people who reach out to me and really want to know, how do I know what specific kids are reading, or how do I see which kids are borrowing books? So that is an amazing question, and it is possible to answer that question in Marketplace. But you do have to use these kind of more granular reports to do that. So Soraa Activity is a great overview, give you a sense of kind of what's happening. I think these reports are great to show the impact of Sora. But if you're kind of like, I just want to geek out on the details or get really into the nitty gritty, you're probably going to then want to go over into these specific reports and dive in. So you've got these different kind of menu options. You've got popular reports, and I would say you will typically almost always only be using these popular reports, which is why they're labeled as such. So we have some additional reports, but honestly, I barely ever use them, other than maybe like purchase order reports if I'm looking at a history of what someone has purchased. So the first one I want to show you is the checkouts report. It's fairly straightforward, but you can actually run this a bunch of different ways to see different information. So when you get into these more specific reports, you'll typically always want to choose this Run New Report option. When you click on that, it pulls up report options and allows you to pick how you organize the information. So for example, we can look at checkouts by branch. And what that's going to do is pull up checkouts for a specific period of time that I pick. And it's going to show me school by school by school and allow me to compare those different schools. And whether you're wanting to compare yourself to someone else or not, it's also a really useful way for us to dig down and see who at my school is making checkouts. So let me show you what this looks like. If we do checkouts by branch, we're just going to leave borrowed from as all. And for today, we'll leave it at all branches. So it's just going to include every school. Again, though, you do have the ability to click your specific school or district. And if you hold your control key, you can actually click and select multiple branches to show up at the same time. So I'm just going to leave it at all. And then again, we can pick a specific start date. You've got your last option if we wanted to do last 30 days, but I'm going to leave it on specific, and we'll just go with that 8/20/2020 date again. So what this is going to tell me is checkouts per school building since August 20th. So when I click update, first I see a total. So checkouts since the start of school have been 19,000. And then it lists school by school. It always defaults to bringing the school or district with the most checkouts to the top. But what I'm really looking for is the ability to then drill into this number, because you can see that each of these is a hyperlink. So this number, so for Delta Middle School, for example, it says 717 checkouts since the start of school, but who placed those checkouts? So I can actually click on this number and it's going to drill me down into that report. And it's actually going to give me a list of all of those checkouts, 717 checkouts. I've got my title, and all of these are, these columns are expandable. I've got my title listed here. I can see the author, what language, all of this information, if it was an ebook or an audiobook from the icon. I can see, how many copies I own. But then as I get over to the right-hand side, I can see a user ID column. I'm gonna expand this a little bit. So this is where I can actually see who checked these books out. Any of these columns can be organized by just clicking on them. So if what I want to see is an organized list by username, I can just click that list and it reorganizes it all by that user ID. So then I can see this particular person, this Amy person, checked out an enormous number of books. She goes way down, or he. So this then can be exported. So if I were to click create worksheet, it would actually dump this entire list of results into a spreadsheet if I really wanted to then play around with it. You can see the date that it was actually checked out. So if I wanted to look at, more specifically, like in the last week, who has checked out books, because I'm running a contest and I'm going to randomly pick a winner from all the kids who have checked out a book in the last week. This is where you would go to get that information. If you guys have any questions about this, please, pop them in the chat, and Derek can interrupt me and I can answer those. So that's your checkouts report. For some of you, you might be interested in knowing just more about what specific titles are of interest. So in that case, we can run this checkouts by title. Maybe I only want to know for, if my school is Delta Middle. Just since the start of school again, this is going to show me what titles have been checked out the most at Delta Middle School since August 20th. So when I click update, it's going to pull up a list of by most popular, what books have been checked out. So this is a great thing to check if, I'm just curious what's really popular with my kids. Are these books that maybe I want to purchase copies of specifically for my school, so that, I'm giving them more access to these books. So that's something that can be really useful to check as well. So we'll hop back to Insights. All of the reports function really similarly. They all have that run new report option, and it pops up a window where you can then decide how you want to run those reports. What I would honestly recommend is that if you're looking for something really specific and you can't quite figure out how to get the report to show it to you, to just reach out to me, because I'm happy to just send you steps for here's what report, here's what to put in for your report options, and get you there really quickly. So sometimes it's a little hard to figure out exactly where to go for that information. One other report you might be curious about would just be the unique user report. It's going to look similar in that it's got your run new report option, but this will actually show you how many of those individuals have actually used Sora. So you can see it defaults here to unique users by branch. So we would see like how many unique users we've seen in each school. Right now it's showing just in the last 30 days, but again, you'd have the ability to change those report options. So this would be a way to kind of, see how many individuals are really using Sora in my school or in my district. So that's reports. And one last thing I definitely wanted to make sure you guys know is just how to get help. So let's hop back to that support menu. So tons of really helpful tools here, but this help and resources area is invaluable. If you click on Marketplace Help, you'll see it takes you to a website where you can find help articles on hopefully just about anything you could possibly need information on. So for example, lending models, if you're kind of going, what was she talking about again? What are all those lending models? You'll find an article, what are the differences between lending models, how to shop for titles in each lending model, how do they work? If you're looking at, purchasing, shopping, invoicing, reports, this website is super helpful. Or if you just go back to that main page, you can search for a specific keyword and hopefully you'll find articles that, are answering the question you're trying to answer. So that's Marketplace Help. And then you've also got the Overdrive Resource Center. So when we click on that, it opens up a new tab. And this is where you can actually go into staff training. And this is my favorite option. Under staff training, you got how-to videos. And these are, I mentioned this at the beginning, very short and concise videos about just about anything. So this is where you would go to see, you've got a whole list of short how-to videos specifically on things in Marketplace. So if you click on this, it'll take you to the full list. Oh, it's gonna load funny today. Getting started videos, specific videos about each different lending model. Sorry, my page is not loading properly. The admin tools, so things like title assignments, curation and reports. There are videos just specifically about how to curate or how to run reports in Marketplace. So this is a really great resource to come if you're kind of wanting to just dive in and learn things on your own. So I'm going to stop talking for a second and let you guys chat in any questions that you have. If there's anything I didn't talk about today that you were hoping to hear about, we've got a few minutes left. So if there are any questions, definitely type those in and I'll try to answer them the best I can.
Thanks, Noel. I just jumped in, so I'm not sure what you covered. Did you talk about the Advantage accounts?
Yeah, quite a
Awesome.
bit. Yeah.
Good. Awesome.
Yep. Yeah, we were talking a little bit about whether it's ideal to set those up on a school by school basis or a district basis. And I guess on that topic, I'll also say, your district, and if you've got a great team of librarians or people who would manage that Advantage account, and everybody is really great at collaborating and coming together, then doing it as a district, I think is great because you can share the resources across the whole district. But if you're maybe the only school who's really doing much with Sora, maybe it makes sense just to do it for your school because you're not going to get a lot of participation, across all the other schools. But Chris, do you have a recommendation on that as well?
I agree. We've had very few that have wanted to set that up, and mostly because they wanted that ability to be able to use their budget to get some specific books for their school. So, in our region, all of our schools still, pay into it. So they've kind of taken the attitude that, well, just let Chris and the committee order them all and take care of it and not have to manage things. So I think we probably got maybe 3 or 4 Advantage accounts out of, our 50 schools, which is, I love it that it's an option because it's, how powerful is that for a librarian? I know Elaine's on here and maybe she can speak to that, but a teacher or student comes in and says, I want this book. Well, that librarian can order it right now. If we recommend it, I only order books once a month, and we have a process that I download the order, the cart, put it into a Google sheet, share it out with all our librarian committee so they can approve it. So it's 30 days. I mean, sometimes a librarian will email me and say, can we get this book? And I'll, can put it in. But that ability for like Elaine, or if have those having the Advantage accounts, can just say, boom, okay, I'll have that book. And within hours it's there. I know when I go out and do trainings in the schools and the kids say, oh, this book isn't here. And I can go to Marketplace and order it and say, okay, check back at the end of school, is powerful to be able to provide that to the students. So, I think it goes either way. If they don't want to do it, then that's fine. As long as you're meeting the needs of the students and we're getting the books that they want in there. However, whichever road we take, it works. Elaine, did you want to add to that?
I had asked her about, because when Pat went to get the district to pay, the district kind of told me they didn't want me to do this, to spend my budget this way. And so I asked her the advantages so I can go back to them and say, this is why I want to do it. And my biggest thing with wanting to do it is because the kids out here don't have the library to go to. And so if they can get it online, then they can read the books. And I kind of, when I did my ordering, ordered new books so that the kids could see the new books or a collection of books that, you know, I've got a couple in the library, but don't have the whole collection and stuff like that. And so that's kind of what I did. I'm hoping that everything's going to go through. I haven't been able to order yet because the money, but I'm really excited about it. So.
Yeah. Thanks, Elaine. And to answer the question, because I know Pat did call me about that as well. They were kind of unsure with Overdrive and why were we, you know, doing, you know, how were you going to deliver them? And I think she had to explain to the district office that this was just adding to our general collection. But I know in your budget, there's a specific amount set for ebooks. And so you might want to look at that and just kind of see, I don't, you know, their budgets are divided into separate categories. So that may be an issue that we need to look into. So let me know, Elaine, how that works out.
Do you want me to add about Washington, Noel, how Washington District handles it? Because while we are technically part of SCDC, we're not part of the SCDC Overdrive Consortium. Because we're large enough, we have our own district consortium. And the way that's set up is Summer Cornelius, the librarian over at Hurricane High School, she actually manages it for the whole district. And so what we do is we send her titles every beginning of the year and say, here's the ones that we'd like to add. And then she kind of plays the role of Chris, helps to kind of accumulate those and purchases those. But then every individual school, if they want, can also have that Advantage account. So I can go ahead and buy books for my library, like Chris was saying, and I can get them right away when I need them on an as needed basis. And it works great. I actually just put in a PO for credit through Overdrive, and I'll just buy like $900 at a time. So I'm under my purchasing requirements. And then I just kind of go through, and as I find things or as kids have requests or they want, get it done real quick. It's taking, I mean, literally I can buy it and within a couple of hours it's on there, if not sooner. And I love that. Teachers are coming to me and they're saying, hey, we're going to read this as a class book. Can we get the audio? And in the past, teachers I've worked with would buy the audio like on other places, and then they would download and kind of share it out, which copyright problems I'm running into. And so I've really pushed to try to make sure that all the audio books we're doing, if they're available, to do them first here in Overdrive, because then I can assign it out and I can say, this is yours. No one can touch it until you're done. And it makes it super, super easy. So, but yeah, I mentioned in the comments, always check with your tech department before you try to go through and set these things up, because they may have something set up that you're not aware of. And so you do want to make sure you're kind of crossing your T's and dotting your I's.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And just for reference too, when we started our Overdrive library, it was the same time, you know, well, we did it 1 year before, and then Charlie Roberts from Washington County, he wrote an LSTA grant so that they could build their own, just because this, you know, Washington school district is as big as the rest of all of our other, you know, rural school districts. So, you know, even though we do cover half the student population is in Washington County. The other half is divided up by our 5 other districts and 7 charters.
Great. Well, I didn't see any other questions come in the chat. There was a question about cost per book, but basically it just varies so much by title that you kind of have to get into Marketplace and look at what's available to truly be able to answer that question, because we saw The Giver was $7.99 for a permanent copy, and there are absolutely books that the publishers have made $45 a copy and they expire after 2 years. So it does vary wildly. So that's a really hard question to answer in a good way.
And that's a hard sell that I have too, when teachers want to do the class sets, but you really have to have a discussion about if we're doing virtual and remote learning, and if we're giving one-to-one Chromebooks, we're talking about ditch that textbook, right? There's still always going to be a place for tree books. I'm not saying that there's not, but, we have to start thinking more just beyond, and I know cost is an issue, but kind of think about how can we deliver these to the kids in the most productive way and get those books out to kids. Right now we're all struggling with COVID and having to quarantine books, and you don't have to quarantine ebooks. So there's a lot to be said about thinking about why we've gone so much digital. Like I said, with Chromebooks, with everything else, we need to think about that too, and then take the cost into consideration. But we know that Overdrive can't control that. It's those darn publishers, and we just try and do the best we can. But a lot of them did offer a lot of free simultaneous use and stuff during COVID. So it is a struggle.
Hey,
Yeah.
Noel, I have a quick question for you though. So if we're looking for a specific title and it's not in Overdrive, that means the publishers either haven't made it available or they're working on it. Is there a way that we can actually submit to you or through Overdrive and say, hey, publishers, we'd like to see like an audio version of this book. Is it available? Because you might find it other places, but just not in Overdrive. How do we go about making those requests?
Honestly, just emailing me what it is and making the request that way. What I can do often is so first of all, I do kind of a search to see, like, does it exist in digital? If it doesn't exist in digital, we honestly don't have a great course of action at that point. But at least then I could say, like, hey, it doesn't exist, so there's not much we can do. If it does exist, I can also then see if maybe like someone owns special rights to it and just let you know, like, it's not something we can request. But there are absolutely times where we're able to go and talk with the publisher to say, can we please have this? Or at least investigate why we don't. So, but yeah, the best way to make that request is to email me, and then we've kind of got processes on our side to follow up on that.
And I've done that several times with Noel. And sometimes I have searched and not found it, and then I'll send it to her and she goes, oh, I found it.
Here
So
it
sometimes it's just the right search, but having to search the simultaneous use, the classroom sets, and the regular library, so you have to make sure you search everywhere to try and find it. But yeah, if ever somebody asks for a book and I can't find it, I just send it to Noel, and I usually get an answer that by the end of the day or next day. She's awesome at that.
Thanks. Great. Well, I know we were only supposed to go an hour, so I don't want to go too far past everybody. They probably have other things to get to, but
it's lunchtime. Thanks so much,
okay.
Noel. Appreciate all you do for us all year long, and especially for participating today. We do appreciate you and all the things that you do.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Take care, everybody.